One thing that I really wanted to ask about was your use of music in your films. There's always a lot of classical music. Is that because you are a big fan of classical music, or?
Yeah, well, my dad, I think, ingrained that in me. He still listens to nothing but classical music and opera, and I mean, on one hand, I don't think the movies would benefit with anything else. I think it's such a perfect marriage of music and opera, especially for the last two movies. And just realistically, it's also very easy to license. I mean, all the composers are dead. And there's no publishing fees to worry about. And it doesn't hurt that it's the most beautiful music ever written. You know, it's for me, it's just I've worked with a composer once, and it was a bad experience. And it's very strange to think of trusting somebody so much to give them a finished picture to just score. Like that, to me, the music is so important and so crucial. Like I need to know going in so I can animate exactly to those rhythms and to those moods. So usually I try and get the music perfect going in. And sometimes if I can't find the perfect piece, like, and everything will be okay, I just picked up my guitar and played it, or there's a little cheesy Casio kind of keyboard action in one of the sections that I did. But yeah, it's sound is just criminally underrated in a lot of animation.
You, in particular, do really, really dense soundscapes, and the sound is really densely woven, and there's a lot of different. You can tell that you really fuss over it. Is that how do you physically get the sound together? Do you do it on a computer? What do you do?
Yeah, that part is all digital. That's all Pro Tools in my apartment these days. I mean, 10 years ago we were still doing sound magnetically on the strips and cutting them with razor blades, but now the effects are just so dense and intertwined and layered. Like it's all Pro Tools, and I kind of taught myself the ropes, and I just have a blast doing it because with animation, you don't, unlike live action, it's not like you enter the post-production period with dialogue from set or ambient noises from the location. You're building every scene from scratch in the sound room, and that is a powerful thing. And I think a lot of people don't really take full advantage of that. They think of animation and they just focus on their visuals and animation, and it's easy to forget that you're working on a movie.
So much of your gags that work because of sound, like in Rejected, where you got the eyeball guy and it goes from one shot to the other and it goes to a different sound cut each time.
Yeah, I mean, sorry. Well, that was an extreme example. I mean, that movie, that's all in the soundtrack. I mean, and we reached a point there where I was just animating people doing this, and I just knew, I was working with some pretty funny people, and we could improvise some good stuff to go over this later on in the 11th hour. And then I think that was kind of my Sgt. Pepper stage, I guess. It got to the point where the dialogue we were coming up with was funnier if it was backwards, played with extreme reverb at it at half speed, and it was just fun to build a scene completely one way. It's kind of funny like this, and then tear it down the next night, and it can be completely different the next night, and funny in a different way.
Your new films are such a departure. Everything Will Be Okay, and I'm so proud of you. Such a departure that it almost really seems like. Do you feel like the earlier stuff was sort of juvenilia, and this is and now you're really doing it?
No, I like the old stuff too. I think the new movies, including The Meaning of Life, which isn't so new anymore. They all date back. The ideas date back to 99, 98, around the same time I was doing Rejected. I think just back then I wasn't clever enough to get those kinds of ideas on the screen, because everything you see in all of the films is all captured within the camera. It's all composited within the camera and shot blind. The Meaning of Life is all stars are lights coming through pinholes, and it's very traditional stuff, and I just wasn't smart enough to know how to do that yet. But I think it's all coming from the same voice, and I don't feel like I've changed very much.
Do your stories behind your animation come from past experiences? Where do you get it? Where does it all come from?
Well, some of it comes from past experiences, maybe 30% to be generous. Like the dream sequence you know, I'm So Proud of You with a seal. Like that was a dream of mine. Billy's Balloon was partially based on a dream. I dreamt about a boy. He was running through a field, and then he just starts getting higher and higher, and then he's flying, and then he gets hit by an airplane, and that was a dream I had, and I just, that's kind of where I built it from there. I mean, you write what you know, to a degree. Lots of times I'll just pilfer my journals, like I'll go through my old observations and things, and you know, if I saw something funny in the supermarket one day, it might work for something else. But it's very intuitive. You know, I don't sit down and intellectualize it very much or analyze it very much. It's all, I feel like I catch ideas more than I really come up with them. Like, I'll have the end of the movie in the shower one day, and you don't know really where these ideas come from. It's just, it just kind of fits, and it feels honest, and it makes sense. Everything will be okay. The conversation about death and the rocket ship, with wanting to be launched in a rocket ship, that was a conversation I had. I still think it's a pretty cool idea. Honestly, the main reason for traveling with this tour right now is the new movie. And again, it's just such a tremendous amount of work that it's really rewarding to actually see it with people. Like, you can release a movie on TV or DVD and get a much bigger audience, but to actually be here and hide in the hallway and watch it unfold for people every night, I mean, that is huge for me. Like, I need that connection after being locked up in solitary confinement for so long. And so that's really, it's a very selfish reason, I guess, but that's the reason we're here tonight. And it's a 16-city tour, and so I just figured we'll throw in some of the old ones. And I think most of you have probably seen a lot of these, but maybe not on the big screen. And you know, with a great audience, with great sound, with, you know, the way nature intended. But primarily, it's getting I Am So Proud of You's feet wet and helping me see how it's working or not working.
When you went into Rejected, was it a concept, or is it something that just spontaneously happened? You're like, I got these guys money now and whatever.
I guess you'd call it a concept if it is a concept. I was getting a lot of commercial offers around that time after Billy's Balloon, and I won't go into detail, but I would just never do a commercial. It goes against a lot of what I believe in. But I just thought it would be really funny to take their money and just do the worst possible commercials and see if they caught on TV. And so I started doing some, just you know, coming up with bad ideas on my own, because it seemed like a fun Andy Kaufman sort of thing. And then they got kind of, you know, get to the point where I realized I had a nice structure there, and I could make a fictional movie and spin it all on itself. And I think the structure is the only reason that movie is funny at all. I think you could put anything between those screens of text, and it would be pretty entertaining. But yeah, that was. It didn't even work. I still get commercial offers. It didn't.
And don't some people think that you've done commercials because they have certain kind of look?
Yeah. Every few years, there's something very suspicious that comes out that I get blamed for. But I've never done a commercial. I never will. But it is a drag because, you know, people think I did do them, and then they, you know, it doesn't really fit in, I guess, with their image of me or whatever. But I got a really sad email from a student once who, his animation teacher had been talking about my stuff in class and showing some of the films, and the teacher had thought I had done this one line of commercials, and he used that as the prime example in his class of why I was successful. And, you know, that was a drag, because it's like, no matter what the movies I've done independently, to a lot of people, and unfortunately to teachers, like, you're not successful until you're financially successful or until you land that corporate gig. And that just kind of reminded me of, like, if there was a music conservatory where the teachers were just shepherding the young composers to write ad jingles, you know, it's just like, rather than actually compose music and express themselves and find their own voice and all that, it's just, that's just a bummer, you know.